Now, let's shift gears into the story of Ron Paul. Whether you love Ron Paul or hate Ron Paul, a guy who predicted everything that's now happening, the inflation tax, the New World Order, the Bank of the World, a true constitutionalist with a perfect constitutional voting record. He actually follows the founders' system. Now, if you don't like that, you hate America as well, not just Ron Paul. Well, Ron Paul, we've seen this now in over 10 debates, gets the least amount of time. And we've shown the numbers. Usually Mitt Romney gets 12 minutes and Perry gets 10 and so on and so forth. Normally Ron Paul gets around 4 minutes, never more than 5. But there's a new low. CBS, and their email got leaked now, CBS decided to not give Ron Paul basically any time, but to not cause a stink. They said, well, we'll at least let him be there. And they told the moderators only 90 seconds. We first started reporting on this. Drudge Report linked to it over the weekend. Now it's a big scandal. And turns out Michelle Bachmann, also there was an email out to suppress her and only give her a couple minutes. So they're very scared of Congressman Ron Paul. But we've got some new breaking news here for you. And this was dug out by one of our listeners that sent us tips. Rob Dew, one of our researchers and the director of the news, he spent a lot of the time today researching this and did indeed confirm that the YouTube video that we have of CBS News shot off the television and the screenshots we've got are indeed the same poll. And we've seen this over and over again. Ron Paul will get first, second, or third place, and they'll just remove him wherever he placed and then never mention him and then give whoever was below him his slot. Well, he won the CBS News poll, as he's won most polls. And it was geolocated. You can only vote once. He won that. CBS News just completely removed the poll, ran a fake one, and we got screenshots of that off their website, where Ron Paul is removed. And then after they'd shown it on TV, a day and a half later, they put him back up on the screen. So there's the first one. Who is your choice for the Republican presidential nomination? That was November 12, 2011. Yes, same day, Ron Paul still winning. Okay, there's your numbers right there. Now, here's the video.
And a CBS News poll released just before the debate showed that Kaine was leading the pack with 18%. Mitt Romney and Newt Gingrich were tied for second with 15%. From the CBS And a CBS News poll released just before the debate showed that Kaine was leading the pack with 18%. Mitt Romney and Newt Gingrich were tied for second with 15%. From the CBS.
By the way, I see this over and over and over again. In fact, go back to that first graphic. She's going off the same poll. That's the poll they're announcing. They haven't posted. They simply skip Ron Paul and just go on to the next person. And then we have it from later in the day. They just simply make up whatever numbers they want and then never even mention Ron Paul. And we've probably written 20 or 30 articles or more on this where they're caught doing this everywhere. Jon Stewart famously cut together all the pieces showing them just ignore Ron Paul when he got second place. Remember that? In the Iowa straw poll. They would mention first, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. They'd mention people with 1% of the vote, but not Ron Paul. Not Ron Paul. When he wins straw polls, they won't mention him. Now let's show a day after this happened, then they bring the old poll back up and post it and change the title, but it's the same poll, same page. So there you have it. And they do this over and over and over and over again. In fact, we ought to do a piece tomorrow night, Rob, news director here, where we go back, and we can't show, all the dozens of examples, but show 5 or 6 where they've cheated him in polls, or where he was number 1 and they don't even mention him, or number 2, they don't mention him, number 3, they don't mention him. And now he gets 89 seconds. The memo said 90, but he got 89 seconds. Just incredible. In fact, here's a quote from the memo from CBS News. Ron Paul silenced by CBS. And then it goes over the quote. CBS News political analyst then responded, okay, let's keep it loose, though, since she's not going to get many questions and she's nearly off the charts in the hopes that we can get someone else. That's referring to Bachmann. So what did the media do today? Instead of focus on Ron Paul getting the least amount of time and clearly being the black sheep being ignored because they're scared of him, they focus on Bachmann, who also got cheated. Okay, continuing with Ron Paul coverage here. We have a headline at Infowars.com. Sabrin, Fed behind effort to ignore Ron Paul. That's what he talked about on a television interview he did. In the video below, Murray Sabrin, a professor of finance at the Ansfield School of Business at Ramapo College in New Jersey, says the establishment media is ignoring Ron Paul because of the fact that he is a critic of the Federal Reserve. And it goes on. For months now, we have been told that the reason Paul is routinely sidelined by the media is because he can't win the nomination and he's too far out of the political mainstream to be a serious contender. Despite this explanation, Paul continues to win straw polls and raise millions for his campaign. He consistently places in the top 3, although the corporate media refuses to acknowledge this. Let's go ahead and play that clip of the professor stating the obvious.
My concerns with the fall of the dollar. What is Ron Paul's plan for the economy? How do we bring back the dollar so I can go to Europe and buy stuff?
I'm glad you asked that question because there are 2 points I want to make regarding this. The reason Ron Paul became a congressman is because of President Nixon's 1971 decision of closing the gold window, which he learned at that time was going to be a disaster for the dollar. And since then, the dollar has lost 80% of its purchasing power. So you want to know why he's paying high prices today? You can thank Richard Nixon when he basically declared the United States government bankrupt because under the post-World War II agreement called Bretton Woods that was done in New Hampshire, the U.S. government was supposed to redeem dollars, $35 for 1 ounce of gold. Because of the policies of the 1950s and 60s and in the Vietnam War, the gold went overseas because we spent so much overseas with the Vietnam War. By 1971, the federal government was bankrupt. So Ron Paul got into the politics because of the money issue. And he's been battling the Federal Reserve ever since 1976 because one of the hallmarks of a sound nation, sound economy, is to have a sound currency where it's not falling in value against other currencies and it's not losing its purchasing power domestically. So if you want to know why you have high medical costs, high tuition costs, high property taxes, high auto insurance costs, high energy costs, it's because of the depreciation of the currency. This has been going on for 2,000 years. This is nothing new. The kings and old debased the currency by putting in base metals, and with this modern technology called the printing press, now it's called digital money, we have an institution with a monopoly of printing money called the Federal Reserve. And he's the only candidate on both sides of the aisle has brought up the issue. And I will argue from now till my last breath that that's the reason he's been silenced by the mainstream media. Because we're talking about trillions of dollars at stake that the financial and political elite need to keep this big government running, the cheap money that the Federal Reserve creates. And Ron Paul is the only one that's blown the whistle on this scam that's been in effect for 100 years now, since 1913. And that's the reason Ron Paul has been blacked out by the mainstream media. You can talk about all the other things, all the other issues, but that's the primary issue. Because if you don't have control of the money by the government, prices will come down and we will have a much better economy, we'll have sustainable growth, we won't have the Federal Reserve manipulating interest rates and causing these bubbles that end in terrible busts for people who don't know what they're signing with the subprime loans. If you really know what's hurting the American people, it has to do with that temple in Washington called the Federal Reserve Building. And if anything that comes out of this campaign is that the American people will be educated about how their money is being destroyed, diluted by the Federal Reserve. And that's the great legacy of Ron Paul's campaign for president.
Okay, so there he is, pointing out that the emperor has no clothes.